Welcome back to Inform TV. I'm Alan Repke, Alexandria, Minnesota. We're talking about sugar and a great policy that all of a sudden over the last decade or so never kept up with costs and prices, that kind of thing, yet these guys still praised their congressional delegation and played pure defense rather than just good offense like we used to do, and see that the job got done and run our opposition into the ground because they were thieves, crooks, cheats, and liars and incompetent, and that's the only way you do things with people like that. You don't let them speak, you take care of them, get them out of the way, and so good government and good economics can go forward. But anyway, in the process now, this 8th day of November, just a second, I want to hit my time so I don't go too long here. We're going to look at a beet, sugar beet crop insurance claim. And statewide, these sugar beets under this federally subsidized crop insurance, about 55% of their premium is paid by you, the taxpayer. And unfortunately, back in about 2000, one way or another, this same group did a bogus claim then and ended up getting some disaster money. They actually made a management decision to delay harvest, and they got caught with their pants down. And I was still farming at the time, but I wasn't raising beets. My world was caving in on me, and one of the Kramer boys, his brother was chairman of the board or something like that, Steve, and we looked at one of Leroy's field, the guy that worked for me for 25 years. We were combining beans, I guess, and I said, I heard they were going to start digging beets again, and first of all I said, what are you guys waiting for? We tried that a decade or so ago, and we listened to our great manager and how we waited a week, we'd get 2% more sugar, because you really don't raise beets for tonnage, you raise beets for the sugar content that's in them. That's what you get paid for on a co-op. And nationwide, 100% of the beets now, I think some of the data looked at, are raised by farmer-owned cooperatives. So the farmers know what's going on, they're involved in the management, and they should not be involved in shenanigans like they're pulling here. But anyway, in this whole process, I had told them way back then, I said, you guys can't be digging these beets. They're not healed yet. They haven't healed from the frost. And you don't know what you're talking about, Repke. We got this great big factory now, and they didn't listen to me on that went way over budget, didn't work. Half the stuff they did, and I owned over 1% of the factory, and I got my 2 minutes to try to explain to them how incompetent they were, and a couple of one of the former chairmen and Leroy, they had to get to their condos in Florida rather than stay there and back me up, because they were just as furious about it as me. But I was the only one saying this thing is going to be a disaster. And we're going to read a little bit of some of the Dorsey law firm that also is involved in this Viking Stadium, and I think that's something that should be stopped as well, of course, and we'll look at some of the Dorsey deal. Yet I always push that we should keep the Dorsey firm back when I was there, because I thought they were doing the job, but I was watching them as well. But anyway, to show you in the process of being press, of trying to see that common people see how incompetent and how corrupt both our business community is, our professional community is, and nobody giving a dang about common citizens anymore, whether you're Democrats, they're Democrats or Republicans, and so on and so forth. Watching this, you know, we went down there and watched that harvest, and if you watch that film, I thought, this warm weather, these guys at southern Minnesota, back in the day, Crystal, Minn-Dak, us, when there was a big crop, you started digging, opening fields, getting those factories running the 1st of September, even before. And in my understanding, even though my old co-op that I was secretary of, lobbied for, in fact, I always said it was and most of the honest people down there that know that, without me getting them a price for the product or the whole industry, that would be the biggest pigeon sanctuary in the United States, rather than a huge sugar factory. But anyway, so I track some of this stuff, and I'm always talking to somebody, or somebody's always giving me heck about something or picking on me, and I pick back. And I always sense things. I don't have to hear things, but I'm always reading here and there, and all of a sudden I'm hearing about some things going on in southern Minnesota, and somebody asked me, what do you think about that? So I got to make a few calls, and of course everybody, oh God, it's him on the phone. I don't want to talk to you, Repke. And that type of thing, but always arm twists for here and there. I got to know a few numbers, and I actually sent an email to my old co-op there and said, give me some information. And, no, we can't do that. And I even went to the point, people, of asking for who's the board of directors there now. I kind of know, but the other co-ops, American Crystal and Minn-Dak over here in Wahpeton, they post it. Now, we've had a policy we just talked about. We took their sugar, their excess sugar, and let them forfeit it to us. We give them about, where do I have my numbers as we get in my numbers, about a $34 an acre subsidy on their crop insurance premium, yet they don't have to come clean as far as who is their management team now, who is their board of directors. And in fact, I think the old managing partner of Dorsey is there, which I always considered my old friend, but obviously some of these shenanigans that are going on, I'm just furious about what happens with the second and third generation when nobody's there to keep them honest, and nobody's there to say, hey, you make a screw up like this, you pay for it yourself, you don't dump it on the taxpayers or in insurance rolls. But anyway, so I started hearing and started watching on some websites and here, there, and everywhere, and reading a little bit. I come to the conclusion those guys are robbing us blind. Plain and simple, just like they did in 2000, or in that range one way or another. So I wrote to the Office of Inspector General of the Federal Crop Insurance deal. And I wrote them this in my broken English and stuff. I'm reporting blatant fraud on a massive bogus frost claim by the management, legal counsel, board members, and stockholders of Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Co-op. Because people, that's what it is. And we'll get into why. And I said to these guys, they're taking a frost claim that these beets aren't fit to process. And yet the reality is, if they're going to prove this, then to keep these guys accountable, as well as our congressional delegation, as well as our Secretary of Agriculture, as well as these crop insurance companies, these agents that are approving disc these fields down. I've been told they're disking down some fields that are making 35, 40 ton, and they're disking them down, or approving them for being destroyed. So I wrote to them and I said, Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Cooperative fields should be covered by outside agronomists, in other words, independents, because this frost damage is a historic thing, is going back to the early 1900s when Chaska, I think, built their first factory there in 1906, and some of the Valley factory, they go back a long ways as well. But anyway, I said, you guys got to get some people from Idaho, from Michigan, from maybe from Crystal, Minn-Dak, and look at those beets on a scientific basis. That's what I'm saying. I think it's bogus, but at the same time, to be fair to those guys, I want you to get somebody independent their luck. And because they won't talk to me, they won't send me any information, let's call them on carpet. That's what the press is, and my background has always been, it's my obligation now as press, and I know what's going on because I held my nose before with some of their shenanigans. And I also wrote this afternoon to analyze this beet crop today before snow comes in or freezing temperatures, which we're going to have next week. And those beets will be toast in. You see what I'm saying? And the good old boys and the good old congressmen and senators we've got in this area would just drag their feet on that. You can go out there and inspect all this stuff you want, you inspector generals, after we get a hard freeze, and we'll just show that Repke, he don't know what the hell he's talking about. Look at those beets, they're froze solid. But anyway, they did acknowledge it. Mr. Repke, this is to acknowledge it. We received your below email and we'll call you on a later date. And I responded to him on another deal. Are you getting going in this whole process? But here's what I want you to think about in the shenanigan in my old beet co-op and my former acquaintances. That's what they refer to me as. They started putting on their con game on their website a little bit, and that's the only way you can describe it, and we'll get to that, why I call it a con game. They had a little chart on the side on their website that showed full harvest, 100% of capacity, would be 3.2 million ton. You heard me right, 3.2 million ton would be 100% of harvest. And what did they do on the 28th? I think it's 28th, the morning of the 29th at 3 a.m. they shut harvest down totally. But I was told by, once a word got out that they were going to get crop insurance, some guys weren't even digging that last night. But anyway, they shut down their operation on the, basically the 28th of October. And they stated things such as this. The forecast is calling for freezing temperatures again tonight because the beets are already considered high risk, in other words, won't store through the winter. We cannot afford to increase the risk by receiving more frozen beet material by harvesting during any frost temperature. And that's not the issue, people. As long as you got these heavy tops and temperatures don't get too cold, if you wait with them a little, the beets naturally heal. We'll even show you some pictures of some of those fields. Accordingly, we'll be closing all stations at midnight tonight and so on and so forth, and this is going into Monday morning. They're kind of prepping everybody. They're doing what I would call their sales job on us. And we need everyone to do. And about a day and 3/4 we'll have good lifting until we reach our goal, which on this same chart was suddenly 2.4 million tons, or a little bit less than that. And then they came out and said on their website by Wednesday, the 30th of October, now that harvest has been completed, we have an opportunity to evaluate the beets that are currently in the piles. Based on these observations, we are concerned about being able to slice all the beets in piles before they start to cause significant storage issues. During this, we are not going to accept any beets from rejected loads or tops or Harvest is done with about 2.4 million ton. Yet that factory, even though they don't want to give me any information, showed on some news reports that in about 2004, they were slicing 16,000 ton a day, or that was a record day. But that was 10 years ago. If you know how to manage a sugar factory and you have the right equipment in, that evolution continues, especially if you had horizontal diffusers. But when they did this great expansion, they cut up a perfectly good horizontal diffuser that was designed to do 6,500 ton. And when I was there, we were pushing 12 through it. And but anyway, in this whole process here, they decided what? That they would once again rely on crop insurance for the remaining 21,000 acres that they released to one of these reports, and take crop insurance instead of bringing them to the factory. And I'm sure these con men and women you call your congressional delegation, well, we'll be arguing, well, this is part of the forfeiture deal, but didn't we already solve that problem for you? All you got to do is shut it off from Mexico, or tell Coke and Pepsi put real sugar in that pop, and you'll have original Coke and original Pepsi. But anyway, in the process, and then when you look at some of the numbers from USDA, it shows how incredibly good payments they've been having since 2006, 8, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and the problem when the prices crashed was later, and obviously they probably had an opportunity to hedge some of this stuff on the futures market if that was set the way it should be. But anyway, in this whole process, they want to turn it over to crop insurance. And here we had a deal in Ag Week, and there was And to show how corrupt the ag press is and always has been, and that's why I started doing a radio program years ago to try to address it. They're PR people for the agribusiness and farmers, plain and simple. And we're sitting here looking at, and unfortunately it's controlled by Forum Communications that also control about 60% of the newspapers here in Minnesota. But anyway, they had an article here that was talking about rain, freezing condition hamper West Central Minnesota beet harvest. And they go on to tell in this article in Ag Week, as well as I think the Wilmer paper down there, that sugar beet growers in West Central Minnesota will not harvest an estimated 25,000 acres, or about 21% of the 118,000 acres planted for southern Minnesota beet sugar crop, according to the cooperative. The shareholders were notified this week, like I said, after Monday night's harvest, that the cooperative would not accept any additional beets started at, they quit at 3 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And in a news release, the cooperative talked about their stockholders, so on and so forth here, and the CEO is putting on, we have done what we can to accept as many beets as possible, but accordingly additional beets would put the cooperative at unacceptable risk. Baloney. They planted them, they can harvest them, and they can process them. And here's the interesting thing in this whole thing. They shut down on the 28th after completing harvest and a few hours into the 29th. What happened with Minn-Dak over here? Which is, if you go on the side of a Minnesota map, is about 100 miles further north than Renville. They kept harvesting. And what did Crystal do that's even probably another 50 miles north at their Moorhead plant or their Hillsboro plant north, and even at Crookston at the time? They kept processing. They kept managing their crop and making sure they were taking off tops, fresh top beets. And remember, these beets are in the ground. And they have, in the case of Minn-Dak now, they were still digging last night, today. And, but they're about done. They're going to have 3 million tons to process over here at Wahpeton. Straight over from Alexandria here. They're going to have 3 million tons. And they're going to have a campaign of 250 days. They're going to process beets, and they've put some storage sheds up, I think. Crystal's got some for long-term storage. It's risky, but they evidently have made it work. They're going to have a 250-day campaign. And what is the slice capacity that the website of the Wahpeton guys that I used to be involved with, the North Central Sugar Marketing, I was on that board, the Midwest Byproducts Board, I was on them with them and Crystal. And what are they saying? They're processing 12,000 ton a day. What's this factory in southern Minnesota processing? Probably at least 15. They should probably be processing 16, but some of the rumors I hear, they were processing 15, and they only have 2.4 million tons to process. And they're playing this crop insurance game. And why are they playing it? Because statewide, these beets, the Minnesota crop, about 454,000 acres, people, are insured at $1,126 an acre. And I tried to get it out of risk management in St. Paul, but of course they're clamming up soon as I'm sure the word gets out. You got to be careful. You talk to this guy. This guy actually knows what he's talking about. And so I would contend that in southern Minnesota, they've got higher historic yields, I think anyway, than Minn-Dak. And so I would guess, for sure they're assured at $1,100 an acre, but I would guess they're probably assured at $1,200. I've even reports that there's growers that got a $1,300 an acre guarantee. And yet, what is Minn-Dak and Crystal both saying? that because of the big crop and all this cockeyed Mexican sugar coming in, because North Dakota doesn't have a sound congressional delegation, or Minnesota, suddenly the payment is probably going to be only $38 a ton. And what do you do when you get the math on a crop size like Wahpeton is taking? That beet crop is probably only worth $950. And just think if you're in southern Minnesota, but you had it insured for $1,200 or $1,300 an acre, and play the game. We'll just process a limited amount of beets instead of having a 250-day campaign. We always used to shoot for a 180 to 200-day campaign, and we should have down there. I tried to get them to put some intelligent aeration program like the Valley had been using for years without buildings. But anyway, in this whole process, and these big payments of these years, these growers have pocketed all that money instead of doing a little understanding. Here's what I want you to understand. These beet crop flexed, and it's known. They had perfect stands, as we showed you there at Bruton, and some of the reports out of the Wahpeton guys showed that they projected their crop coming into harvest at 20 ton, and all of a sudden they're going to have a 25-ton crop. And they should have been watching, because those beets didn't just suddenly jump from a 20-ton crop to a 25. But they're doing their due diligence, they're harvesting, and they're going to process them, or at least try to get them all processed. And what did southern Minnesota do? Oh no, we're going to play a game. And we're not going to utilize our factory. And instead of starting like they all should have in late August with this crop and doing some testing on a daily basis to see what that crop was doing, or every other day or every third day, you can monitor this crop. These growers should have been able to see that, hey, this crop is coming on. And most of the board members are what? They're beet growers themselves. And one of the things I want you to look at some stuff, you can go to Minn-Dak, M-I-N-D-A-K, or American Crystal. They got some harvest reports there. And then go to SMBSC, Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Co-op.com, and look at some of their history and some of the people that I dealt with on their history. And people, one of the Johnson family, they go back to the 30s. My dad raised beets continuously since 1946. And then the old Chaska factory closed. We handled, when I got out of college, we dumped beets well into February that we had freezing conditions that year. We just dumped them in the field and picked them up later. And now they got really modern equipment. They could be doing that if they truly were froze. Minn-Dak is showing us those beets weren't. I've got some slides here, the scuttlebutt in the coffee shops and the bars in southern Minnesota. Everybody knows those beets were fine, and all they had to do was be managed. These guys got caught with their pants down, or just greed, whatever you want to say. And yet at the same time, we had a big article about Dorsey saying how they took care of their clients here back in 2000 when they had a million pound evaporator fall in this expansion process, where I told them they didn't have any management in place to expand the factory. A million pound deal fell through to the second floor in this bogus expansion. It took them forever to finally get going. They maybe got a great factory now, but they got some disaster money. They got crop insurance money that they should have never got. They made a management decision. They had the lawyers to muscle everybody. They had the politicians, and people, same old is happening right now. Any way you look at it. You don't have Minn-Dak processing beets, taking beets. You don't have Chaska or American Crystal taking beets further north, and these guys saying playing games with crop insurance and disking down a perfectly good crop. People, I'm going to try to blow the whistle on these guys, but unfortunately, when we don't have people that grab the ball and throw it over the fence, or ask your congressmen and senators what the Sam heck is going on. In Inform TV, we talk about we want to enlighten you and we want to energize you. And this is a prime example of where we were just enlightened. Now we need somebody to be energized and to see that these guys are held accountable and they don't get a fat crop insurance check and not process their crop. If they weren't going to process it, they shouldn't have planted it in the first place. And when we look at that history on there, the interesting on that history, my old buddy Frank Johnson, Larry Bonson, and of course they're going to cuss and denounce me in any manner, shape, form of the rest of them, but I could care less. I stand on principle, and they know that, and that's why Frank held up an airplane back when I was probably in my 20s for half an hour at Minneapolis airport, and he said, we're not leaving, and they were going to get the authorities today. He'd have been in jail for that, but he held it up for 15 minutes for sure. I think it was closer to half an hour, and we got to get this guy to testify. And when we landed, I remember that time we landed in Washington, D.C., and the pilot said, if it wouldn't be for the sugar beet growers, we wouldn't be coming to the gate a half hour late. So that always stuck in my mind. But so in this process, look at how in one Minnesota beet farmer, I think Frank's in his 90s now. I haven't seen him for a decade or so. But he talked about his family topping beets by hand and shoveling on a truck by hand. And look at that, people, in comparison to what I had here showing that 12-row lifter working south of Bruton. How you took those tops off and you filled those semis in a matter of minutes. People, these guys left 10 days of great harvest weather. I don't believe they had as muddy a condition in any manner, shape, or form that the guys over Wahpeton and in Moorhead area, they had a 3-4 inch rain. They maybe had too much rain down there, but the reality is there's no question they could have harvested that whole crop and should have. And if these guys get crop insurance out of that, and none of that management team and those board of directors are not held accountable by the system, it is a disgrace. And with that, we're going to say we did ruffle a few feathers today. We'll see if we can see some feathers fly in the air, or the same old sugar-coated, incompetent government we have today wins in the end. But Inform TV, we just want to see that you're enlightened about what's really going on and see if we can energize you to get something done, because this is a tragedy. Thanks for listening to Inform TV. I'm Alan Repke, Alexandria, Minnesota.